Good afternoon, everyone. Today's interview is with Mr. John Eves. He, at one time, is the chairman, John H. of the Fulton County, Georgia, commissioner, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. He's also running for Congress, politicking for Congress. How are you doing this afternoon, Mr. Eves?
Angela, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with your listening audience.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So, you've decided to run for senator. Am I correct?
It's actually U.S. Congress. It's still a big
Congress.
deal. Yes,
Still
U.S. Congress.
Still a big deal. Yes, sir. I understand that. So, what made you decide to politic for this and run for this office?
So, Angela, I have almost a lifetime of service, going all the way back to when I was a student at Morehouse College. Was involved in the community. I love to help people out, especially youngsters in high school and junior high school at the time. And from that point on, throughout most of my professional and adult life, have been helping people out. And then got involved in politics as the chairman of Fulton County, elected in 2006, and did that for 11 years and became a private citizen for about a year and a half. But I discovered that I still had a hunger for politics and found myself with a great opportunity to continue my service as a congressional candidate in District 7 here in Gwinnett County. So I'm very excited about it. The long response to your question is I just love helping people out. And I believe that public service or the political process is one of the most effective ways to help people out today.
Okay. Politics is being in public service. I understand that. Many people with a current administration here in America feel like that politicians are not for them.
Yeah, I certainly can
feel
understand.
That way. Some people are likely to not vote for this reason. What do you have to say about people not voting?
Well, first of all, you can't complain if you don't get involved in the game, and the game is to try to do something to affect positive change, not only for yourself but also the community. And within the United States, as well as many countries around the world, there's a political process. And politics is the name of the game in terms of policies and rules and regulations and laws that are funded by taxpayers. And so if you want to have things done, you have to get involved as a voter, as a constituent. And politicians are just like people. Some politicians are not so good, and some politicians are very good, just like some people are not good and some people are very good. And so you shouldn't just have a blanket sweep about saying all politicians are not connected, not serving people, because that's not true. I certainly feel that I have a good, strong record, and I think that it may not be perfect, but it's still a good record that points to me trying to do the right thing, make right decisions, to try to help people out. So I do have a record, and people can examine that record, and I believe that I should be judged individually along with anybody else who's in politics or considering going into politics.
Now, on your website, Mr. John Eves, it says John Eves for Congress, and it talks about your grandfather, Mr. Cecil, who immigrated to this country for a better life as a black and Jewish man. And it goes on to say, or it goes on to read, he experienced racial, religious, and economic discrimination. Despite facing such adversity, he tirelessly instilled the values of hard work and servitude. Inspired by his legacy, I have dedicated my life to learning and serving my fellow citizens. So it goes on to say, government should be beholden to its people. So this is basically where you got your start, your love for people, understanding religious and ethnic discrimination, and want to serve and help people. Am I correct?
Absolutely. So putting what you said so well into even greater context, here it is, a man came to this country not only wanting to have a better life, but he wanted to be a doctor. Came from Jamaica, ended up in Jacksonville, Florida, right smack in the middle of the Deep South, during a very strong, oppressive era, Jim Crow era. He wanted to be a doctor. He never got a chance to go to college, but he raised, along with my grandmother, 13 children, 10 of whom survived childhood and became adults, and all of them went to college. And so I saw and heard the stories. My grandfather was very close to me and vice versa, and he shared with me how growing up in the South in the 30s and the 40s and being subjected to ridicule and criticism and racism, and sometimes being fired from a job. And my grandmother, who was her wife, she was a domestic worker. You know, she worked in white people's homes, and she was also subjected to racism and discrimination. But despite it all, they were good people, raised their family, raised their children, including my father, who passed on those same qualities to me. So it wasn't just my grandfather, who I love, my father did the same. So that's what's a part of my DNA. That's what drives me. It's a history of coming from an oppressive situation of family and persecution. But at the same time, today I am certainly sensitive to issues of equality and fairness, and I always look out for the underdog, because that person needs to be protected and supported in the political process.
Yes, sir, I understand that. So the district that you're running for as congressman is District 7.
Right. Okay. So it's District 7. It includes about 80% of Gwinnett County and about 20% of Forsyth County, and both of those two counties are in the northern part of metropolitan Atlanta.
Okay, that is wonderful. So, did you always intend to run for office, a political office, or it was just something that you want to do later in life, that you want to help people?
Yeah, when I was a student at Morehouse College, we certainly, I think one of the unique things about Morehouse, where as a student you're taught to be a leader. And Morehouse did a great job then and still does a great job now of bringing forth wonderful leaders in the African-American community. And I had a chance to hear people like Jesse Jackson, Maynard Jackson, great leaders locally as well as nationally, and they inspired a lot of us as young men. And so, that still is a part of who I am today. So it's something I've always wanted to do, and I felt that politics is the best way to have influence over a large number of people.
Yes, sir. I understand racism, too, not necessarily because of your faith, though, but because of the race.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm a Southerner.
Rang then, that's somebody calling harassing me.
I'm sorry, what's that?
When the phone just rang, that's somebody calling harassing me. My family never calls because they know I'm doing shows, interviews.
Right.
So people call and harass me on the phone.
Right.
And it gets hard. My family is discriminated against a whole lot. My mama once said I wouldn't know how to act if they didn't discriminate against me. That's all I know is discrimination. They discriminate and hurt her as much as they can.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate, and nobody in society should be subjected to discrimination because of their color of their skin, their gender, their sexual identity or orientation, their race, their religion. And I just am a firm believer that we should treat everybody right, and everybody should be given a fair chance and should be treated equally.
I have a cousin who's facing housing discrimination. I face discrimination on a daily basis. but some of it comes from black people with me. But when I'm trying to work, a lot of it comes from white people because it's economics, money. They don't want to see me with money. There's some blacks like that, too. They'd rather see me fired than work and have money. It's a sad situation. But also I'd like to know, you're also part of My Brother's Keeper, which was started by President Barack Obama. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, sir. It's an intervention initiative to reduce the school-to-prison pipeline for boys of color.
Right.
So you believe in this, My Brother's Keepers, okay?
Yes. So President Obama, around 2012, launched this initiative around the country for governments to embrace this concept called My Brother's Keeper. And it was designed to target boys of color who sometimes are subjected to negative things in our communities, dropping out of school and ending up into criminal activity, and then ultimately going to jail or prison. And so as chairman of Fulton County, I certainly wholeheartedly embraced the concept, led the effort to create a My Brother's Keeper task force that brought together a lot of community organizations with the sole intent of coming together to come up with strategies to keep boys in school, support them in after-school programs, and to help them have meaningful employment opportunities. And so very proud of what we did. In fact, we were one of the top governments in the country to have this program, and we were recognized by the Obama administration.
Yes, sir. That is wonderful. It's wonderful everything that you are doing to help stop the school-to-prison pipeline for boys of color. It also happens to young women, young black women, teenagers.
Yeah.
So you also part of the HIV education and treatment. Could you talk about that some?
Yeah. So Atlanta, as a region, has one of the highest rates of HIV new infections in any place in the country. It's one of the highest, and so certainly began to embrace the concept of what can we do to curtail the number of new infections, especially those that are occurring in the black community, especially among men having sex with men, black men having sex with men. So one of the things that we came up with is something called a PrEP, P-R-E-P clinic, which is pre-exposure prophylactics. So there's a medication on the market called a PrEP pill that minimizes the likelihood of transmission of HIV/AIDS from one partner to another. And so we created these clinics that were targeting people in general, but also people who are infected with the HIV/AIDS virus, so that they can get on this drug regimen, so that in the event that they did continue sexual activity with a partner, that it would minimize the likelihood of transmission. And so we did that within the Fulton County. Very proud of the effort, and to my knowledge, it's still going on and still very successful.
Yes, sir. That is wonderful. You're also for criminal justice reform, targeting the issue of the over-criminalization of African Americans in the Fulton County jail.
Right.
Over-criminalization.
Right. So Fulton County used to have in its jail as many as 4,500 people in the jail on any given night. Very overcrowded, very unsafe, poor sanitation conditions. So I work with the police department, the judges, the district attorney, public defender, all members of the law enforcement community and the juvenile criminal justice community to come up with ways that we can better help people who are part of what was called the offender population, people who committed crime and were in jail. Coming up with jail reentry programs. In other words, when people leave jail, what can we do to make sure that they do not recommit crime and go back into jail? What can we do to prevent people from even committing crime? So we did a lot. And so over the course of 10 years, we started out with, again, 4,500 people in jail in 2006, and then by the time I left the chairman of Fulton County, we had it down to $2,500 people a night, every night. So I'm very proud of that achievement.
That's good. That's good. You know, Atlanta, to me, and what I've always been told, and I've visited Atlanta numerous times, I consider Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia, as the Mecca, one of the Meccas for black people. Especially if you're an entrepreneur or professional, colleges and things like that. That is one of the few places that black people can go to actually have a career where actually working hard and studying hard pays off without the discrimination. I'm not saying black professors give people favors. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that it's one of the few places that black people, African Americans or black Americans can go to actually work very hard and achieve.
Right.
I go to college or university and study very hard and make good grades and achieve without there being a whole lot of racism. That's one of the few places. In Birmingham, Alabama is another place, because Montgomery, Alabama just got its first black mayor.
Right.
And it's one, like I said, it's one of the few places that you can go, from what I can tell from visiting. And what the family I have there is that that's like I said, one of the few places.
Right.
So
yeah, Atlanta is a unique place. It is often referred to as a black Mecca, a place where there is a congregation coming together, convening of a large number of very good, dedicated people of African descent. And it's not just a city anymore; it's a region. And so we certainly have a lot of institutions here, colleges and universities that really train new generation of leaders and professionals. And so it's really a unique place within the United States of America.
Yes, but it's not a whole lot of places like that where hard work, honesty, and being legal, doing things legally, actually pays off for black people. It's not a whole lot of places like that where overwhelmingly people succeed of one race.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I know you talk about HIV and incarceration, which I didn't know that. But you understand what I'm saying, sir?
Yeah, I'm listening to you now, yes.
Yes, it's one of the few places that you can go where there's not severe discrimination. You know, even if you work hard, you study hard, you make good grades, you still don't get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the South. So it's still a lot of that where studying hard, just because you're black, you don't get ahead.
Yeah.
That's the only reason.
Yeah.
They make it doubly hard. You have to go through discrimination, too. I like Atlanta. I like Fulton County. So, sir, Mr. John Eves, you're running for Congress, District 7. So what about economic equity, government assistance, minimum wage? Do you believe that women and men should be paid an equal wage for the same work?
Absolutely. Equal work for equal pay for equal work. Absolutely. I think whatever was done in the past, which was unfair, in 2019, 2020, it needs to change. And so I do believe that there's a tremendous growing awareness that this was just a bad practice, unfair practice, discriminatory practice. And on top of that, unfortunately, even within the black community, where you have so many heads of household who are female, and when females are subjected to lesser pay than males, it already puts the family behind the eight ball, so to speak. And so I am 110% behind equal pay for equal work.
Yes, sir, I understand. Okay, so you also support an increase in Earned Income Tax Credit, EITC, which is a program to provide an additional path to economic wellness for the millions of working poor and their families. So how much do you think that should be? I think it's like $500 a child or something, or $600.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that. This is one of from a conceptual or from an idealistic standpoint, certainly feel that, more needs to be done to help the people who are poor, not only the credits program, but also students who go to what's called Title I schools. These are schools that are located in impoverished areas, and they often get additional funding support. I think that we should do an even better job to help people out who are in impoverished areas in terms of a quality education, because education can be the best way for social mobility. So going from, tough situation to, lower class to middle class, the goal is to get more and more people into the middle class. So I think that there's ways that you can provide temporary relief, the credits programs, but also how can you support the school system and make them even better, particularly those schools that are underperforming in poor neighborhoods in this country.
So I have a question. I've been reading and seeing on TV that black people in this country are not doing good economically.
Right.
Why do you think this is, that black people don't have a lot of savings, things like that?
Well, there are a lot of things that are happening. Number one is there is a cycle of something called a cycle of poverty. In other words, when a person, a mother or father, is poor, chances are their children will be poor. And so there's also where you live sometimes determines what your outcome in life will be. And I think that we need to make greater investments in communities to make them more vibrant and to provide an environment for people who are poor to get a good education. So anyway, I just think that more of a holistic approach is needed to get people back on the right path.
So I have one more question. You're not
a
psychologist. Why is the tendency in black communities to keep the other black person from being all they can be and earning money? Why is that? Do you know? Are you just not a psychologist?
Well, there's something called the Willie Lynch mentality. Willie Lynch goes back to slavery, and this man said the way that you can keep people who are enslaved from advancing is to pit them against each other. And I just think that there is a history in this country where black people have been socialized to not be supportive of one another. And some of those things that happened back in slavery times, back in the 1800s, some of them are carried on today. So I think that the Willie Lynch theory is sometimes, still prevalent in black communities today.
Okay. So what is your belief about education?
Well, as I've said, education is the key, and you have to.
Do you believe that there should be an increased investment into public education? And do you believe there should be a universal pre-K?
Yeah, I think pre-K is crucial for people to get a head start in life. And many times kids from poor neighborhoods, poor homes, poor households they already start out behind schedule, and they're already not as well equipped as others. And so pre-K sometimes can be the difference maker, where you can get kids on the right path of learning how to read, acquiring social skills, being exposed to good habits, personal habits. And so I am certainly supportive of universal pre-K, because right now there's a lot of inconsistency. There's some kids who don't go to school until they're in kindergarten, or so I think that there's a need for just a universal approach to providing preparatory support to young people before they even hit kindergarten.
I know I went to a program called Head Start, which I later found out was started by a black woman. Head Start was.
Yeah, I didn't do Head Start, but I did pre-K, and so Head Start is a great concept. Why it's no longer done on a consistent basis, I don't know, but certainly there's a need for pre kindergarten training for our young people.
Yes, sir. So, teen violence, gun violence, curb use of guns, urban violence. So, do you believe there should be an investment in after-school programs and mentor programs to combat this problem and common sense gun rights?
Yeah, of course. I think, guns are a problem in our country, and we have to. It's not just the mass shootings, which is a problem, but there's a larger problem in terms of teen violence, that the numbers of who are inflicted with it are higher than the mass shooting violence. Not to say that that's not a concern. It is a concern, but the individual homicide. So I think that providing mentoring programs for young boys of color, as well as girls, and after-school programs, job opportunities, strong structured education. Those are all things that are needed to curtail some of the problems we're having right now in our society in terms of teen violence and bad activity that young people are displaying in our cities.
There was a program when I was a teenager that was called JTPA. I forgot what it stood for, but I was able to go to work. At 14, I was able to get paid for learning how to do resumes and job applications and employment.
Yeah, so you've had those type of programs. When I was, a high school kid, 30, 40 years ago, they had something called the CETA program, and I got my first job through the CETA program, and it got me off to a good start in terms of understanding how to prepare for a job and how to be serious about it, how to save money or whatever little money I made. And so those type of programs are excellent, and so there's a benefit to society when those type of investments are made and opportunities are provided for young people to get an education. Get their first job.
Yes, that's right. Those are good. Those were good programs.
Right.
So, what is your opinion about climate change?
So there's something called the Paris Climate Change Agreement, where all countries around the world, industrial countries, had agreed to minimize what's called their carbon footprint. And, of course, under the Trump administration, the United States has pulled out of it, which is a mistake. And so I think we need to get back into the Paris climate agreement with all the other industrial countries around the world. And then, I think as individuals, we have to be more thoughtful and mindful about what each of us can do individually, whether it's to do a better job of recycling, it's doing things to conserve water. So there are a lot of things that we can do as a country, but there's also things that we can do as individuals.
Okay. So criminal justice reform, you touched on that. You touched on with the school to prison pipeline for black girls and boys, black teenagers, male and female. But do you believe there's an over-incarceration of African Americans? Because I definitely do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so just off the top of my head, the stats basically are African Americans make up 13% of the population, but we are also 30-something% of the jail and prison population in the country. And so we are almost 3 times the rate of our population represented in the jail and prison industry. And so I think the numbers are certainly there. The evidence is overwhelming, and so it really is a problem in our society. I'm a strong advocate, believer that we need to end what's called mass incarceration. So in 1970, there were roughly 300,000 people who were in our prisons and jails in the United States, and that number has grown up to 2.3 million people today. So it really is a big problem in our society.
Yes, sir. It's grown up to what, sir?
I think it's 2.3 million from 300,000 back in 1970.
Yes, a lot of people in prison, everything from taxes to for not paying taxes to food stamp fraud and everything else.
Well, the majority of the arrests are in the areas of misdemeanors and petty stuff, as well as, obviously some felonies, but or many felonies. But yes, there's a problem with crime in our society. Yes, there's a problem with violence, but a lot of criminal activity sometimes falls into the areas of nonviolent offenders. And so to me, that's the area that we can do a better job of addressing. How can we, obviously violence is bad, but how can we also address in a more effective way the nonviolent
detox
offender?
Clinics, more mentors, like you've said, mentors, more after-school programs. We had that here in this little town, but it was closed. After-school programs like the one that was here in this town that I live in.
Yeah. So Angela, I got another appointment. If you can just maybe get one more question in.
Okay. All right. One more question. How are you doing in the polls?
So we haven't done any polls so far. We still have 6 more months to go, but we certainly will be doing polls, or there will be some polls that will occur probably, in January. But right now, I feel that I'm one of the front runners, and based on my background, and I'm very, very confident, Angela, and I want to convey this to your listening audience. I'm very confident that I'm going to win this race.
I'm confident that you will, too, and you're going to make a great congressman.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Very important position, and you're going to do wonderfully.
Thank you so much.
Happy with you.
Well, thank you so much. You've done a great job with the interview, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. John.
Okay, have a great day. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. All right, everyone, that was Mr. John Eves. He's running for Congressman of District 7. He was the chairman of the chairman of commissions there in Georgia for quite a while. Now he's running for congressman. I cannot vote for him, but those of you that can, I think he's going to do a great job, and he's obviously intelligent and educated. He has sensitivity for religion discrimination is and for race discrimination is did to people. And I talked a little bit about my family and myself. I'm not immune to discrimination. There's no shield protecting me from discrimination. But I do know my rights, and I do know I can sue. So that's basically what's going on in my life and in my cousin's life and my family's lives. We're suing. All right. Thank you for listening to Show Talk with Angela Butler. My phone number is 850-768-3768. And I did not say what we are suing for, but they're all individuals' lawsuits. God bless everyone. Exercise your rights.